I'm back. It's been over 3 years, but I've learned a lot and I've got a lot to share with you. Magic is real, but it's not what you think it is. In this video, I'm going to share with you the secret teaching at the core of all magical and mystical tradition. The teaching that mystics and wizards and religious leaders have been hiding and gatekeeping since time immemorial on pain of death. But before I can give you the simple answer for what this teaching is, I've got to tell you a story. You may want me to tell you the time, but first I've got to build you a clock. So let me build that clock. I was raised from birth as a fundamentalist Christian. I was taught that the Bible was the only source of truth in the world. But eventually I lost my faith. I was actually an atheist for a time. I remember saying something along the lines of, it's better to be an atheist without any faith who actually does something and brings some good into the world than it is to be a Christian who just hopes and prays and never accomplishes anything with their life. But regardless of my lack of faith, I still was so fascinated with the concept of human belief. I wanted to understand why people chose to believe in gods and spirits and things that they could realistically never prove exist. Why was that? And despite my lack of faith, I had seen prayer work. Maybe not for me personally, but for my family members, for friends, for people that I knew, I had seen people get results just by praying. I'll never forget, I knew someone who told me that this story where they had their car break down and they only had like $300 in their bank account. So while their car is in the shop, they're just praying that they have enough money in their bank account to be able to cover the cost of the repair. So then they get the bill, and guess what? The number on the bill is the exact amount that they have in their bank account. And if you're like me, you've probably heard all kinds of stories like this from all types of different religions. For me, what is more compelling even than that are the stories of people who were not religious, but prayed to God for some kind of guidance or proof that God exists. And through a series of coincidences, they wind up at a church and then eventually devote their lives to God and become a true believer for life. Those are very compelling stories. And even just in my former religion, I had heard hundreds, if not thousands, of these anecdotal stories. But time passed, and I started to explore a little bit more outside the realm of my religion. And I found that these kind of stories are actually super common in every religion, not just other sects of Christianity, but anything that you can imagine across cultures, across times, across continents. There are stories of miracles going way back into human history, but you can also find stories of modern day miracles all over the place. Now, it was hard for me to wrap my head around this, and when you take into consideration most religions, especially Christianity, teach that there is only one true path to God, that this specific religion is the only way that you can attain eternal life or salvation or heaven or whatever you want to call it, right? And that kind of disconnect between these two ideas, that people of all religions are apparently getting results, and the belief that there's only one way to get them, it didn't sit right in my brain. If anything, that's partly what caused my disbelief, because, the two just didn't add up. I was disillusioned. I thought that maybe all of these stories were just exaggerations, or maybe religion in its entirety is just a bunch of con men preying on the sick and the weak-minded. But that itself also just didn't sit right with me. It seemed that there had to be something more than that. I mean, when you look at nature and reality and the universe itself, everything is just so complex and coincidental. There's no way that it could just be here by random chance. I mean, you look at nature and you can see a sense of humor in the world around us, even just in the weird random events that happen within our lives. It seems like there's this intentional sense of humor or meaning behind all of it. So where does that come from? What is that? It seems too complex to just happen automatically without any cause behind it. So in time, I left my old religion behind, and I really started to dive deep into everything that I could find as far as what science said the nature of our reality was. I dove into conspiracy theories, trying to find some kind of hidden wisdom or secrets being kept from me there, and I devoured anything that I could find relating to ancient spiritual and religious practices. Everything from Jewish Kabbalah mysticism to Nazi esotericism, literally the two most extremes that you can get. And what I found really shocked me, that in all of these religious traditions, they dovetail in a very specific way that just seems too coincidental to be by accident. Every religion, regardless of its origin, really seems centered around the belief in immortality, that quest to last longer than our mere flesh and blood physical bodies are designed to be here or are meant to be here, and to yearn for something greater, to escape those human chains. Whether that's ascending to heaven or living forever on earth or becoming a spirit and exploring the cosmos, attaining nirvana, or literally just becoming a god and creating your own universe. There's all kinds of ideas out there, but they all go back to this one core, that there is some way to attain immortality. It's all about the nature of the self, the nature of the soul, knowing yourself, and finding some kind of deeper understanding or wisdom that allows you to ascend to something greater than humanity. Immortality is really the original quest of humanity. Every person that's ever lived, I would think, has at some point or another desired to be immortal, to live forever. But there are so many wide-ranging ideas about what immortality is, what the word itself even means, and the concept in reality probably isn't exactly what you think it is. It's similar, but we'll have to get into that in a different video. But the point is that immortality is the core that links religions together. It's that foundational drive that inspires us to believe in something greater, right? But it all comes down to this core concept of immortality, that we desire to attain to more, and that there's some kind of hidden secret that we can ascend beyond our human limitations. So I continued my research, and I really started to focus more on the scientific side of this and looking for connections between science and religion. And I was really surprised to find that there have been a lot of scientific historical figures who got their hands on alchemical manuscripts or ancient magical texts, grimoires and stuff, that read them and said, wait a minute, this isn't magic, this is describing advanced quantum physics. This is science that just wasn't understood at the time. And I saw that and started to see this pattern, that magic is not mystical. I mean, it is, but that's its own topic. Magic is science. It's something that we might not necessarily understand, or at least not have the tools to understand yet, but it's something that we can still partake in and act upon and use in our lives to bring about outcomes that seem supernatural, but are actually just using fundamental laws of nature and reality to achieve whatever our will is. So let me explain this a little bit further. So these documents are describing quantum physics, right? That's like one of the most, if not the most, complicated scientific topic that we even are equipped to be able to understand at this point. Like, our scientists are still developing technology to be able to study and measure quantum physics and start to break it down and understand it. It is so far beyond me that I cannot explain it to you, but definitely go research it. Look at stuff like the double slit experiment and all kinds of things. Super, super interesting. But anyway, the point is that there are all of these scientific figures who see this connection between science and ancient magic. Even Einstein talked about quantum relativity, or quantum entanglement rather, and he called it spooky action at a distance. And as far as our current understanding of it goes, that's still basically the extent of what we know. It's something spooky is happening without any kind of physical manipulation or connection. We don't understand it. Seems pretty magical. It's kind of crazy, but it's definitely been proven to exist. We know that it's a thing. Now, there's another less well-known scientist that I want to talk about in connection to quantum physics and magic. His name was Jack Parsons. He invented rocket science. You know the saying, it's not rocket science, figure it out, like we use that to say that something's not complicated. This dude literally invented and figured out rocket science through trial and error. He invented liquid jet fuel. He figured out all of the math on his own amidst almost blowing himself up. I mean, he did eventually blow himself up, but that was at the end of his life after he invented all these crazy things. So this man, decades after his death, is still impacting each and every one of our lives to this very day. Without him, we wouldn't have space travel, we wouldn't have ICBMs, there would be no Cold War, we wouldn't have satellites, which means we wouldn't have phones, we wouldn't have the internet. You wouldn't even be able to see this video right now without this man's inspiration and creation, right? So what was Jack Parsons' faith? What did he believe and practice? He practiced ritual magic. Like the most ancient forms of ritual magic that you can find, or at least like their descendants. It's kind of complicated going back through magical histories of stuff. It's too complicated to explain here. But anyway, he was one of those figures who found ancient magical texts or just stumbled across them through daily life and said, wait a minute, this is just explaining science. This is quantum physics. And so he merged this understanding of science and magic and mysticism and led this crazy, extraordinary life that still touches us to this very day. He literally was a high school dropout, showed up at Caltech, and was like, okay, we're making rockets, we're going to figure it out, and they did. It's crazy. And Jack Parsons is really only one of many different examples that I could list of people who believed in both science and magic being kind of one and the same. And he believed that even if we don't have the tools or the either technological or mental equipment to be able to really understand and grasp what magic is, at least not yet, we can still understand and apply the principles of it enough to be able to have a direct effect on our lives and for us to get these seemingly supernatural results from it. And emphasis on seemingly supernatural, because it's not really, but that will become more clear as I explain. Now, if magic is truly just science, then it would follow that magic would have scientific, logical rules that would apply to everyone, regardless of where they came from and their beliefs, their religion. It doesn't matter. It's just science, right? So if that is the case, why are there countless magical traditions that are as widely varied as life itself and also basically incomprehensible? I mean, like, people have had to dedicate their entire lives and take crazy drugs and break their brains just to be able to, like, grasp the fundamentals of magic and begin to understand it. So why would there be all this diversity and variety if it's all just based on fundamental laws and principles? Well, let me answer that with a question. Imagine you go back in time 5,000 years and you try to explain to someone from that time period what a light bulb is, or what a car is, or the internet, or your cell phone, right? You know, the magic talkie box in your pocket that has all the sum of human knowledge on it. How are you going to explain that to someone that is at a primitive or at least ancient level of intellect and understanding? Now, our brains haven't really changed in that time, but like just understanding of science and the world around us has vastly increased since then, right? So to even attempt to explain that, you know, you've got to explain engineering, you've got to explain craftsmanship, you've got to explain mass production, electricity itself, and by the time you've talked for maybe 5 minutes, you're already going to be tied to a stake and lit on fire for being a witch, right? Like, these people just aren't going to be able to grasp these advanced concepts. You're going to be frightening them with seeming, you know, demons and magic, because it's just beyond their comprehension. They don't have any framework to understand what it is that you're trying to teach them. You have to teach them how to understand what you're trying to teach them. So even if there was an ancient mystic who had a perfect, complete knowledge of the truth and the real nature of reality, how would they possibly be able to convey that information and preserve that wisdom for future generations without just being murdered as a heretic. It's pretty much impossible, right? It turns out the only way to really safely be able to preserve that kind of knowledge is by making it as difficult and complicated and incomprehensible as humanly possible. It's unfortunate, but it's just kind of the way the world was back then. You know, if you had a basic understanding of medicine, you would just get killed, right? But we as a species have advanced so much farther beyond that. I mean, we're still primitive in our own way as humans, but we have a basic concept of science. And because of that, our society is now at a point where the average person can actually grasp the fundamental teaching behind magic. Applying it may be a bit of a different story that's a little bit more complicated, but almost anybody can at least understand the core secret foundations of magic nowadays. I mean, really, anyone who's seen The Matrix and can, understand the concept of simulated reality can pretty much understand what I'm trying to say here. And no, the secret isn't that we live in a simulation and aliens, blah, blah, blah. That's not what it is either. Are you ready for the secret? All right, here it is. You are God. And I am God. And everyone that you have ever met is God. But what does that mean? What am I talking about here? It sounds like I'm just spouting nonsense, right? Well, you don't have to believe me yet, but just suspend your disbelief for a second, ignore what I've said, and just imagine that you really are the one true, infinitely powerful God, whatever that means to you. You're eternal, you have all wisdom, all power, all potential, reality is at your fingertips, you can imagine something and it comes into existence, you can do or be or see or create anything that you can imagine, anything that you want, right? That's amazing. But if you always have existed and always will continue to exist, if you encapsulate eternity, then it stands to reason that eventually you're going to get bored. And what would God do to soothe their boredom? Well, if you're a gamer, you probably already know the answer. You crank the difficulty up, right? If you've played Borderlands for 1,000 hours, it's not going to be much fun playing on normal mode. You're going to have to crank it up to the hardest difficulty just to keep things interesting. And the same applies here. So we have mortality. But even just mortality really isn't enough of a difficulty increase to make things interesting if you still have the powers of God, if you can still just snap your fingers and make reality into whatever you want. It still kind of loses some of that interestingness and challenge. So what's the next step? How do you increase the difficulty even further? By making God forget that he is God. By making God forget his innate, inherent power and ability. By being born with no memories, no knowledge, you're a completely blank slate, and you now have the opportunity, the privilege really, to start from nothing and be able to ascend to godhood, to be able to begin to understand your inherent power, your inherent abilities, and the fact that you really are the one who is in control of your own personal reality. And along with that realization, of course, comes all of the empowerment, the excitement, the emotion. I mean, imagine that you really do know that you are God. You know that you can do absolutely anything you want. You can make any dream you could ever have come true just as easy as that, exactly the way that you want it. Wouldn't you feel empowered? Wouldn't you feel special? Wouldn't you feel hopeful and happy and privileged just to be alive? Right? And that is the whole point. It's the learning process of starting from nothing and being able to ascend and remember and relearn what you are and your power. And we may be mortal, right? We've got these human shells, but whatever the consciousness inside of us that is driving our bodies, that is eternal. It may be stripped of its memories so that it can start the cycle over again, but we have this opportunity to be able to exist on and on throughout all of infinity and be able to keep having these new, unique, special experiences that are shaped by our own desires and the world around us. There's infinite possibility. That is the point of all of it. And also, just as a side note, another point that I thought is kind of important about all this is just the idea of empowerment itself, in that if somebody is trying to sell you on something, they're probably going to be convincing you that you need some product, some device, something external from yourself, and that that thing is going to be the key to empowerment, the key to getting whatever it is that you desire. When somebody is telling you that all of your power comes from within you, that you empower yourself, what that person's really trying to tell you is that you don't need anyone else's permission or approval or assistance to be able to do anything that you could ever want to do. It is all within you. You have the right, the power, and the ability to do whatever you want. Now, this all sounds logical enough, but it's really hypothetical, right? Like, how can you actually know? How could I provide examples of this? But let me try to explain with another example. What is money? Well, it's currency. It's something that we can exchange for goods and services, right? It's a form of power, but the paper itself doesn't hold that power. The paper itself is meaningless, right? It's the fact that we all agree that the paper is worth something that makes it worth something. And back in the day, money was backed by gold. You could take your paper notes to a bank and exchange it for physical gold. But what is gold backed by? It's desirable. Literally, it's just shiny. People are willing to work for it because it's nice to look at. It's as simple as that. And if people are willing to work for gold, what backs that willingness to work? And what backs the thing that backs that? And you can work that thought experiment all the way back until you eventually get back to the root of money itself and find out that money really is just a representative of the human spirit, of human willpower, the human desire to create and to achieve and to leave a legacy behind. That is what money represents, that we have imprinted onto the physical currency that we carry around with us. Or now it's really just mostly digital currency. But now our physical and digital currency isn't even backed by gold anymore. It's fiat currency. It literally is only backed by human faith and willpower, right? This paper that we all have, we all say is worth something, it's really just a lie that we invented and is only true because we all collectively agree and believe and act like it is true. You see what I'm saying? We created it. It's not real. And this same logic applies to all human institutions, all societal structures, really everything we know. It's all backed by faith and belief. It's all a social contract, a construct that we all agree to be a part of. And that's what holds it up. It's literally self-sustaining based on our willpower and our belief. But now, going back to science, we have demonstrably proven that humans have the ability to affect the outcome of events occurring at the atomic level. Literally, just by being in the room to observe something happening, we can play a part in determining whether an atom will be expressed as a particle or as a wave. Like I mentioned earlier, look up the double slit experiment. There have been even more recent studies using quantum computers to simulate our universe that have really surprised me, to be honest. They found that when you simulate our universe, it exists only in a single fixed state. In other words, there's no possibility for change, there's no possibility for chance, or for anything to really happen. It's just there. It only exists in the one way. And they said, well, obviously that's not right. That's not how our universe is. So what do we have to tweak in order to get the simulated universe to be able to behave more like ours? And what they did was they simulated an observer and inserted that observer into the simulated universe. And all of a sudden, because there was an observer able to interact with the universe and exert its own will upon it, that universe was able to exist in multiple different states. It was able to change. It was able to be malleable. Chance and statistics and all sorts of things started to become possible simply by inserting an observer capable of recognizing and understanding and interacting with the simulated universe. When I read that, it was like mind-blowing to me. I really wish I could explain it better than that, but I am not a scientist. Really, just go do the research yourself. It's crazy. So cool. But the implication of all of this is that there is some kind of fundamental relationship between our universe and us within it as the observer. It's almost like our universe is a giant cosmic playground that's here for us to explore and play with. And that is kind of going back to the whole "you are God" thing. It's a universe in which infinite possibility and variation is possible, where anyone can exert their will in any way that they choose, and all of these experiences are happening all at once, being expressed in an infinite variety of ways that seems like it would be able to entertain, right? Keep someone or something from being bored. But the point is that anyone can exert their will in any way that they want, and through their effort and their action and their willpower and belief in themselves, be able to achieve whatever it is that they want. The old quote from the Bible, faith can move mountains, right? Now, you may not be able to just believe and make the mountains float away, or, I mean, maybe you can, who knows, right? But regardless, if you believe enough that you're willing to go pick up a shovel and start digging, sooner or later, your faith and your actions backing that faith will have moved the mountain. But now, if all of this is true, if we are each unique expressions of God, and we all have God within us and the power of God within us, we can all create and achieve whatever we want, make our realities and our dreams look however we want them to. If that really is the case, then why is the world in the sorry shape that it's in today? Why is there still suffering and sickness and hate all around us? Well, stay tuned for the next video, because in that one I'm going to answer that question and really get into the science of how this all works, how these God powers work, what the allegories of heaven and hell really are trying to teach us about our inherent nature, because it's not so much that there is a physical heaven or hell, it's more of a lesson for us to learn in the here and now to help us be able to use our powers and abilities in a way that is for the greatest good. And then most importantly, of course, we're going to discuss how you can use your inherent powers, your faith, and your belief in yourself to be able to achieve the life of your dreams right here and now. So come back. That will be out as soon as I can get it. I'm going to be trying to post a video at least every week, but hopefully more than that. We shall see. But it's good to be back. If you were subscribed to me in the past, thank you for coming back and checking out my new content. I'm really excited to be back. I've been working hard at this, so hard I lost all my hair. No, I'm just kidding. But it's been great. It's been fun. And if there's any one piece of information that you gather from this video, it's this: get off the internet. Close YouTube, put away your phone, go touch grass, go live your best life, and be the God that you were meant to be. Thank you. Goodbye.